Shalom and welcome to Simchat Yisrael. This week's parsha is Vayetzei and continues the story of our father Jacob on his journey of self-discovery. We read how in the aftermath of Jacob's deception, Esau vows to kill his brother the first chance he gets. Rebekah tells Jacob to go and hide out with her brother Laban for a few days until Esau has calmed down. What Rebekah doesn't know is that the few days will turn into 20 bitter years for Jacob before he can return home. Before we begin, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel down below. Jacob travels to the land of Haran, comes to a well where he asks some local shepherds if they know his kinsman Laban. While they're conversing, Laban's daughter Rachel arrives to water her flock. What happens next is a mystery. Upon seeing Rachel, we are told that Jacob lifts up his voice and weeps. Maybe Jacob was just happy to see her. Or maybe it was love at first sight and Jacob was overcome with emotion. But both of those explanations require the tears that Jacob shed over Rachel to be tears of joy. That's not what the text says. The Hebrew text says, Vayisa kolo vayevech. He lifted up his voice and wept. This expression is not used very often in the Bible, and every time that it is used is to express a deep sense of loss and mourning. We see these words when Hagar believes her son is going to die, when Naomi parts from her daughters forever, when Israel believes that they are not strong enough to enter the land. This is the weeping of David over his kidnapped wives, the weeping of a nation that has been declared unworthy. This is never an expression of joy. It's always one of regret and seeing the things you love slipping through your fingers. And if this expression sounds familiar, it's because it's used one more time in the Torah, when Esau realizes that Jacob has taken his blessing. The text is intentionally drawing attention to the similarities between these two verses. It's almost as if it's saying that because Jacob caused Esau to weep, now it's Jacob's turn to experience loss. But why would Jacob weep in sadness when he saw Rachel? A midrash from Genesis Rabbah explains that Jacob wept because he was coming to his bride empty-handed. He said to himself, "My grandfather's servant Eliezer came to Laban with 12 camels packed with gold. But I have nothing but my own hands with which to purchase my wife." The midrash tells us that while Jacob was traveling to Bethel, Esau sent his son Eliphaz to follow Jacob and to kill him on the way. Eliphaz catches up to Jacob, but he doesn't have the heart to kill his uncle. But he can't just return home either. So Jacob tells Eliphaz, "Take my money instead and bring it to Esau as proof that you have killed me. To be a beggar is as good as dead anyway." Jacob, who left home a wealthy man, arrives at Laban's house a beggar. When he sees Rachel, he instantly falls in love with her and knows he has to be with her at any cost. But he also knows that Rachel will not be his without years and years of hardship. And so, Jacob lifts up his voice and weeps for the losses that he knows he will bear, and because it all could have been avoided if he had just been patient and waited for God to bless him in his own time. If Jacob had not stolen Esau's blessing, he would have been able to pay Rachel's bride price up front and return home in a few days. Instead, Jacob must reap the harvest of his deception under the whip of his uncle Laban. Jacob has already begun to suffer the consequences of his actions, but he still had to learn why what he did was so wrong. And in this incredibly karmic story, Laban, of all people, is the one who teaches Jacob the error of his ways. Jacob agrees to work for Laban for 7 years in return for Rachel's hand in marriage. But on the wedding night, what should have been the happiest day of Jacob's life, history repeats itself. First, Laban prepares a great feast to distract Jacob. And then, under the cover of darkness, while Jacob is blind, Laban disguises Leah in Rachel's wedding clothes. In the morning, when the sun rises, after he's already consummated the marriage, he realizes he's been tricked. He rushes to confront Laban and asks him, "Why have you deceived me?" And Laban responds, "It's not the practice in our place to marry the younger before the elder. I don't know how they do things where you come from, Jacob, but around here, the younger doesn't take what belongs to the elder." And Jacob has no response to this. He could have argued that the marriage wasn't made in good faith. He could have demanded an annulment, or he could have taken Rachel and made a run for it. But instead, he remains silent and accepts Laban's terms. Jacob finally knows how it feels to be the victim of deceit, how much it hurts, and how damaging it is to the relationship. In a way, Jacob finally gets what he's always wanted. Now he knows what it feels like to be Esau. Join us next week as we finish the story of Jacob and find out how he finally learns to be himself. Shalom and thanks for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe. And don't forget to visit simchatyisrael.org to learn more.